back to the Conspiracy Couple podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very mysterious and interesting topic for you guys. Before we get started, we wanted to just say Happy Valentine's Day.
I don't want to say that. Just want to make that clear.
I'm going to say Happy Valentine's Day. From us to you.
From you.
Thank you for being my Valentine.
Them or me?
Well, you didn't want to say Happy Valentine's Day, so...
Who's your Valentine? Oh, I didn't want to say
You haven't even asked me to be your Valentine yet.
I'm married. I don't have to ask you.
Yes, you do.
I'm not going to ask you right now.
Well, then at this point, I guess I don't have a Valentine except for my listeners and the cats.
Well, did they ask you?
It was implied.
I feel like it was also
No.
implied in the marriage vows.
Anyways, Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're spreading it with someone you love or with a wonderful furry animal.
Someone you tolerate.
Anyways, so Valentine's Day is coming up, and
Tomorrow.
It will be tomorrow. Yeah. Happy V-Day. This is coming out on Super Bowl Sunday, so...
Happy Super Bowl. Go Bengals.
Bengals. We are...
Shout out to Andy Six. Yeah, I remember. Look at this.
I
Husband
can't believe
points.
you shouted him out.
I did.
Andy
You didn't.
Six, if you're listening, we want the Bengals
He's
to
not
win because of
listening.
you.
Well, hold on.
Also,
That's
I
not
love
why
you.
I want
Also-
the Bengals to win.
Also,
We
I
didn't.
love you.
Also, the fact
I'm
that
kidding.
we didn't shout him out, I did, and I don't even listen to his music.
If you're listening, I listen to your music
He's
all the time,
not listening.
Andy.
You know he's not. No one famous listens to this podcast.
I don't know that. Anyways, go Bengals. Happy
Shout out
V-Day.
to you people who are not famous and listen to this podcast.
If you are famous, let us know.
They're not.
Even if you're like D-list famous, we'd be curious to know.
If you're like a mayor of your town,
That would be cool.
Give us a key to the city.
Yeah. We don't even care what city.
I kind of care what city. I don't want a bad city. What if it's like the worst city in a state?
Well, I mean, I feel like that's subjective. Anyways, we're going to be talking about a bad city today. So,
Nice.
I'm not going to segue into the topic yet because...
Because you haven't said our social media stuff.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and say that today.
Conspiracy Couple on Instagram. I don't remember the Twitter handle.
It's CC Podcast 22.
I'm not very active on there.
No,
I'll
yeah.
be honest, I haven't been good at it.
Yeah.
But nobody really follows us either, so...
No, yeah.
I kind of feel like Instagram's the main one.
Yeah,
at this
Instagram's
point.
definitely the main one.
Email us future topic options.
Or DM us.
Yes, you can do that. But if you want to submit some future topic options or just like questions or comments, you can do that at conspiracycouple22@gmail.com.
Also, we recently got a really sweet DM from someone on Instagram saying they loved our show.
Oh yeah, who was that?
I don't have my phone because it's dead. But
I don't
it
have
was
my
so
phone
sweet
either.
and
Shout out to you. You know who you are.
made my day.
I feel like we should find out who that is. We're gonna pause right here and look it up, and then we're gonna shout you out for real because that was really nice. Shout out to Chloe on Instagram.
Yeah, that really made my day.
We went and found your account.
So we could shout you out because
Yes.
we feel like you deserved it.
Yes.
So-
Shout out to you, Chloe. Just throw your phone.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Chloe. You're awesome.
Yeah. And if you ever want to send us any encouragement, we will shout you out.
Yes.
And
Leave a 5-star review. We'll also shout that out.
yeah, it just made my day. So
Yeah.
thank you for the kind words.
Yes. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, you already know. But if you're not, just listening, you should go check us out on YouTube. Conspiracy Couple Podcast. Subscribe, like the video, turn on notifications when you will find out when we have posted a video, which is usually sometime on Sunday or Monday morning if I'm late every 2 weeks.
It is sometimes usually on Sunday.
I try to get it done on Sunday, but a lot of times Marissa is like, all right, let's record Saturday night, which does not leave
I'm
me
very busy.
enough time to do the editing on Sunday.
I'm very busy.
But I do my best.
And I usually fall asleep by 8:30 on a
Yeah.
Friday night unless I have like some
Well, my hope
secondary
is to
caffeine.
get this done before the Super Bowl so I can watch it and not have to worry about this.
Of course. Anyways,
So it should be up during the Super Bowl.
so if you're
Or
not
uploading
if you're
the
not
Super Bowl.
watching the Super Bowl, then you can just watch us on YouTube.
Or if you are watching the Super Bowl and you've already listened to the podcast because I somehow got it up Sunday morning, you can just play it again on silent while you watch the Super Bowl.
You have options.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to head right into our topic.
Yeah.
After
I
our
feel like that was a really long
5-minute
intro.
preamble.
Didn't we had a conversation about making the intro shorter, and that was probably one of our longer ones.
I don't recall that conversation.
I do.
Anyway. I
Anyway.
think we said we would make them longer.
Yeah.
Anyways, today we are taking another foray into the true crime conspiracy world, and we are discussing one of the most enduring serial killer mysteries of all time. Do you have any guesses as to what that might be?
I'll be honest, I already read it.
Okay, well then never mind.
I was going to try and come up with a fake guess, but I couldn't.
Okay, well, Ethan already knows because he cheated and looked at my notes. But we are going to be discussing Jack the Ripper.
Woo! I thought you said we were discussing a city.
We are. It's more of a district than a city.
Yeah.
But anyways, Ethan, do you know anything about Jack the Ripper?
Yes.
Briefly.
He killed people.
Okay, well.
And was the main character in a play that was the basis of Psych the musical. So
very good.
All I know.
Okay, well.
He killed women, didn't he? Prostitutes or something?
We're going to get to that, but yes, he did.
Well, you asked me what I knew, and I'm telling you what I think I might know.
Yes, well, okay. So.
Yeah, every time I actually have an answer, you're like, we'll get to that.
Because I don't want to spoil it.
But I'm telling you what I think I know.
Okay, well, you're right.
You ask the question, and you get mad that I have an answer.
He killed prostitutes.
Do you want me to just say no every time?
Yeah. No, I actually don't. You could say if you know stuff.
I'm not a liar.
Okay, well, anyways, I do want to add a little bit of a disclaimer. We are going to be discussing, of course, murders, and they are a little bit more violent. I'm going to, of course, leave out the more graphic details, and I'm going to try and kind of keep things more medical. I feel like if you use medical terminology, it's a little less gross. I think because a lot of people don't understand medical terminology very well.
I don't know. It kind of makes it sound more gross to me.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm in medicine.
I feel like, yeah.
But I'm going to try to discuss everything as tactfully as possible and as sensitively as possible. So if you do feel any kind of way, I just wanted to let you know up front. So now that we've got that all settled, first thing we got to do is we got to get into our time machine, and we need to travel back in time to the 19th century, specifically to the year 1888.
Good year.
No, it wasn't. In the Whitechapel district of London.
London town.
So
that was an awful accent. Oh my gosh.
It was very bad. Yes, that was very bad.
My British accent, I'll do a better British accent later in the podcast.
That's okay.
I will.
Anyways, so the Whitechapel.
We're talking about London. There's no way I'm not going to do a British accent.
You could avoid it.
That, what I just did was not a British accent.
Okay.
I will admit that was bad.
That was bad.
That was really bad.
Okay, so
anyway.
We're going to keep going.
So I apologize to any of our listeners from the UK.
I'm just going to keep talking.
From great old Britain.
Okay.
Where we dumped the tea.
Okay, Ethan.
It's not where we dumped
We dumped the tea in the Boston
I know
Harbor.
we dumped the tea in the Boston Harbor, but it's whose tea we dumped.
Anyways.
Sorry. Sorry again.
The Whitechapel district of London. And this area was known for being very impoverished. And it was a pretty congested area, so it was really full. It had a lot of people, and it had terrible living conditions. It had a very large immigrant population, a very large skilled immigrant population, and it was specifically a large population of Jewish and Russian immigrants. And this was also an area that was really known for being full of crime. There was a lot of gang violence, and there was a lot of prostitution. And a huge number of women in the Whitechapel districts were prostitutes, whether that was their full-time profession, or a lot of women, because the area was so impoverished, would kind of take up prostitution kind of as a side hustle when they needed some money for their family.
The original side hustle.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's of course going to play very heavily into the case. But a video I watched and an article I read said that there was a brothel on pretty much every corner.
Wow.
And that prostitution was so common that there was, like, everywhere you could go, there was a brothel. There were working women everywhere. And prostitution was actually only considered a crime if it caused a public disturbance.
How would it cause a public disturbance?
Like if there was some kind of a scene, or if it somehow kind of spilled into another crime or into like more polite society.
It's kind of like
if you did it in the dark, it was fine.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of like the Washington like drinking and driving laws, but not drinking as in like alcohol, drinking as in like water, where it's like you're technically not supposed to drink or like use your hands while you're driving, but it's like a minor charge or whatever, and so you'll only get charged for it if you are pulled over for something else.
Yeah, so prostitution was a crime, but not really, and it was super commonplace in this time, and it was just considered to be kind of, I guess, a hazard of the area, and it would have been really common for prostitutes to get hurt or killed while they were working, and it was just kind of like, they're prostitutes, if they get attacked, that's kind of what they signed up for. If they die, that's kind of what they signed up for. So it wouldn't have been considered a big deal, and nobody would have discussed it. It just kind of was like, oh yeah, okay, another prostitute died.
Sad.
Yes. So this is the area where Jack the Ripper was hunting and killing. And all of the crimes that he committed were committed within 1 mile of each other.
Wow.
So it was a very small area. And he has 5 murders that are typically linked to him. And all 5 of his victims are believed to be prostitutes. And these 5 women have a name. They're called the Canonical 5.
Okay.
So many people think that he could have actually had up to 11 victims. Some people think that maybe he was a serial killer in other countries and kind of would go around. But we're going to be mostly talking about the Canonical 5.
Okay.
And this case was also one of the first cases to become like a true crime frenzy. And this is because this was in the newspaper, it was coming out with all the updates, and we also were starting to see an increase in literacy levels. So people could read, they could understand, and the information was being printed and distributed to the mass public. And when he was never caught, the public was so outraged that it led to the police commissioner resigning.
Wow.
So it was a huge deal. So the first murder occurred August 31st, 1888. And very early in the morning, victim number 1, Mary Ann Nichols, was found in Whitechapel by a man who was walking and noticed her body. And he told another man, so the first man's walking, he sees Mary Ann Nichols, he tells someone else, and then the 2 of them approached together, and they found her. And her throat had been cut, and she had been disemboweled, which means that her internal organs had all been removed.
Right.
And the police figured that her time of death was only about 30 minutes before her discovery. So it was likely that the man who discovered her body had probably walked past the killer on his way to find her.
Wow.
And at the time, the murder was attributed to the work of a local gang, a random attacker targeting prostitutes, or a Jewish man that went by the title The Leather Apron. So at this time, they're like, okay, this is just like gang violence, or it's some other serial killer that they call the Leather Apron.
Was the Leather Apron an actual serial killer?
Yes.
Oh.
So we are gonna, like I said before.
So is it possible that the Leather Apron and Jack the Ripper are the same person?
It's not believed that they are.
Oh, okay.
The Whitechapel area, like I said, had a very large Jewish population.
Jewish immigrants.
And there was...
Not thought of very kindly, usually.
No, there was a huge amount of anti-Semitism in that area.
Yeah.
So, after victim number 1, Mary Ann Nichols, is found, there was a huge amount of pressure from the police to arrest whoever killed her. So, they arrested a man named John Pizer. And he was a Polish Jew who was a shoemaker and supposedly went by the name The Leather Apron. He did have a criminal record, and that criminal record included some stabbing crimes. However, he was cleared of involvement because he had a solid alibi.
Which was?
He was, like, nowhere near the area when it happened. So, number 1, Mary Ann Nichols is killed, and the police are like, oh shoot, we gotta arrest someone. They arrest this guy. It's not him.
And this is in the 1800s when police work was just like, I think it was him.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking,
I don't know how they caught anybody
I'm just
back
thinking
then.
these crimes are so violent. Imagine how much DNA
They couldn't.
they could not test.
Yeah.
That just makes me like,
I do not understand how anyone got caught for a crime back then.
no, literally. I have no idea. Anyways, September 8th, 1888. Victim number 2, Annie Chapman, was discovered by a man who lived in the building nearby where she was found. And her throat was also cut. And this time, her uterus had been taken by the killer. And the removal, it wasn't just like out, it was gone. He had taken it. And the removal of this organ led the police to hypothesize that the killer had like a medical background. And he had some knowledge of anatomy. He knew where the internal organs were. And perhaps that he was a physician of some sort. So at this point, we have to bring up something very interesting about this case that I think kind of contributed to all the hysteria. And that was, similar to the Zodiac killer, Jack the Ripper sent letters to the media and to Scotland Yard. So I feel like we hear a lot about Scotland Yard, and they're the ones who were investigating this.
What do you mean we feel like we hear a lot about Scotland
Like, I
Yard?
feel like they're legendary, but I think it's because I read a lot of Sherlock Holmes.
This is the only thing I know Scotland Yard from is Sherlock Holmes.
I'm like, wow, they are legendary. Like, I don't know.
I
Anyways.
kind of don't have a favorable opinion of them because they were usually wrong in Sherlock Holmes. And Sherlock Holmes was like, nope, this is who did it.
Well, yeah, Sherlock was always right.
And the Scotland Yard was usually wrong.
That's true. I don't know.
But they're probably better.
It sounds so cool. The name just sounds really cool.
Scotland
Anyways.
Yard.
So, September 27th.
That just sounds like a lawn service, honestly. Scotland Yard.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I can see that.
Get your fertilizer at
Landscaping.
Scotland Yard.
And solving crimes. Scotland Yard.
Everyone needs a hobby.
It's a hobby. So, September 27th, 1888, the media receives a letter from someone claiming to be the killer. And the first note said, and this is just a snippet, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed. They look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work on the last job. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again."
Wow, that's creepy.
Yes, and that's not the whole letter. I left out the particularly, like, skeevy, creepy parts. I was like, ooh, that's very chilling. I don't like that. So that's not the whole letter, but it kind of just gets to the bottom of the message. He was proud of what he had done. He was proud of his work.
And he was going to do it again.
And he was going to keep doing it, and he thought the police were idiots for not catching him. And at multiple points in the letter, he literally writes, "ha ha." Like, he literally would say something, be like, "ha ha!" exclamation mark. I was like,
Interesting.
it was really interesting. It just, that was funny. He's like, literally, he's laughing. I'm going to write in that I am literally right now laughing.
Well, they didn't have LOL back
They
then.
didn't have the laughing, crying emoji, I guess. It's my favorite emoji. Anyways, so he also ends the letter by saying, "Yours truly, Jack the Ripper."
That's why he gave himself the name.
He gave himself the name.
Wow.
And at the time, a lot of people thought the letter was a hoax. And that was because the police and the media had been receiving a ton of letters regarding the case, pretending to be him. Kind of, you know, the similar thing they ran into with Zodiac Killer. A lot of people wanted to hop on the train. So a couple days later, we have September 30th, is when victim number 3, Elizabeth Stride, was discovered at around 1 o'clock in the morning. And she was unique in that her throat had been cut, but there was none of the other injuries present that had been associated with his other victims. And instead of making people think, oh, maybe she's not connected, that actually made people think that he had been interrupted while he was killing her by the man who had discovered her, and that he wasn't able to do anything more.
Interesting.
Some other people also thought, okay, well, maybe she was killed in an unrelated attack. This isn't the work of Jack the Ripper. However, the location and her profession led people to believe that she was, in fact, a victim of Jack the Ripper. Mm-hmm. And he was just rushing to kill again, or that he had been possibly interrupted. And a man came forward. Okay, I'm just going to throw this out there. This made me mad. So a man comes forward claiming that he saw another man assaulting a woman in the area where Stride was attacked. But because he believed it was just a husband and wife getting into an altercation, he crossed the street and walked away.
Woo! So, I didn't realize it was a murder. I just thought it was spousal abuse.
I just thought it was domestic violence. No biggie. So later, when he saw Elizabeth Stride, he confirmed that she was the woman he saw being assaulted. That he walked away from. He literally crossed the street to the other side and walked away because he just thought it was a man beating his wife. Yeah, he was roasted in the media.
Good.
Everyone called him a coward.
Yeah.
And he was
deservedly so.
Yes, he was roasted.
I mean, I know domestic violence wasn't like a crime then.
But it still is not a good thing to do.
You should, if you walk away from domestic violence and don't say anything or do anything, you are a coward.
Period. So, yeah, he was deservedly so roasted. And it is believed, though, that if his story holds up, he could have been the man who interrupted Jack the Ripper and caused him to flee. And it was believed that when the police came, that she had been dead for 30 minutes.
Wow.
Okay, so 45 minutes after Elizabeth Stride is found by the police, a woman named Catherine Eddowes was found.
Wow.
So Eddowes had just been released from jail at around midnight, and she was walking around the area looking for a place to sleep when she was attacked. So the last time she was seen alive was at 1:30 in the morning by a group of men leaving a bar, and they saw her with a man. But they weren't able to provide a good description of the man with her. And she was found kind of more typical to the typical victims. Her uterus and kidney were both missing, and her face was very disfigured.
Strange that he took the uterus.
Yes. That leaves people to believe that he had a huge hatred for women. Because the uterus is symbolic.
He is killing women.
You know, I would say the act of murdering women shows that maybe he hates women. But of course, you know, the taking of the uterus is a very symbolic kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Very strange.
But apparently, as he was fleeing the scene of Eddowes' crime, he dropped one of the only pieces of evidence for any of the crimes. And that was a piece of Eddowes' apron. And it had a piece of paper that had written on it, "The Jews are the men who will not be blamed for nothing." Now, I would like to note the spelling of Jews. We all know that Jews is spelled Jews. The letter spells it Juwes. So,
Interesting. Also, what does that mean?
Basically, it's anti-Semitic, but it's also saying, like, they're gonna get away with everything.
Oh.
They're not going to be blamed for any of this. So the strangest part about all this was that based on the location on the piece of apron, it indicated that the killer fled Eddowes' crime scene in the direction of where Stride was discovered. So remember, Eddowes was killed second. Stride was killed first.
So he kills Stride,
gets interrupted.
He goes and kills Eddowes. And then
flees.
Goes back to where he killed Stride?
Yes. So it goes back towards the area where...
How do they know Eddowes was killed second?
Based on the time of death.
How accurate was the time of death?
Well, I feel like... I mean, you can determine the time of death based on, like, how warm is the body, where is the blood pooling in the body.
This is the 1800s.
Yeah, I mean... Also, like, how dry is the blood? That kind of thing.
I'm just asking how accurate.
I don't know how accurate it is, but it's believed that she was killed within 45 minutes. I
thought it was 45 minutes her body was found.
Yes, her body was found.
So...
But let's just say, how long it takes for the police to get there?
I don't know.
Well,
Well, were they on horse? Or
they were on motorcycle.
they had motorcycles then? I don't know when anything was invented.
The car was invented in 1908.
And what year is this?
Wait, actually, I think motorcycles were invented before cars.
What year is this again?
I think, okay,
What year is this?
1888. I think motorcycles were invented in 1903. The Harley Davidson,
So they
I think,
wouldn't
was
have been on
invented in
motorcycle.
1903.
When were
Google, when was the Harley Davidson invented?
I'm just asking motorcycles because it's going to be the same thing. 1885. The
Okay,
first true
No,
motorcycle.
Google when, Harley Davidson was invented.
This is very captivating, I know.
1903.
And that was when it was founded.
1903.
That's when the company was founded. Wait, what?
When was Harley Quinn invented?
I didn't realize that was the suggested
1903.
thing. I said one was Harley, and I pressed space, and I saw it invented at the end, and I just went down to the suggested thing, and apparently it was Harley Quinn. It's very confused.
Anyways, so he flees the scene. Now, the thing is, he's fleeing back in the direction where all the police are right now.
Right.
All the police
So
are
how
at
did they not
strides.
catch him?
I don't know. But here's the thing. Why would a killer go back to where the police are unless, one, he wants to look at his crime?
They knew where he was leaving based off of a piece of paper?
Yes.
What about like the wind blowing it? It's a piece of paper.
I don't know, Ethan.
Right.
But this, well, one, as someone who's watched a lot of episodes of Law and Order, there's like a certain, like it's a psychological thing where certain people like to, I guess, relive the glory of their crimes by being involved in like the investigation.
So he was like maybe going back over there to check and see how they were doing, or maybe be like, "Hey, coppers, how's it going?"
Or that he lived in that area and he had to go back through there to get to his house.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, if everything's within a 1 mile radius, a lot of people have like a comfort zone, like a physical zone.
So he probably lived in the area.
He
where
probably
he was
lived
killing.
within the area, yes.
Hmm.
So,
I'll buy that.
October 1st, we have a postcard that's sent to the police that it's claiming to be from Jack the Ripper. He's taunting them for the double murder. So the interesting thing was, the fact that there were 2 murders wasn't well known yet.
Oh.
So these occurred September 30th. October 1st is when they get the postcard. The news of the double homicide had not been in the newspapers for the day yet.
Interesting.
So that was like, oh, 100%.
So it was definitely from him.
Yes, so that meant it was definitely from the killer. Because most people wouldn't know that. And they were also able to look at the first letter and the postcard and determine that they were written by the same person.
Did this one have any spelling errors?
I don't know. I don't know. So, October 16th, a man named George Lusk was the head of a committee of citizens, and they were like kind of a group of civilians who assisted the police department in investigations.
The neighborhood watch.
Like the neighborhood watch, yeah. And so he received a letter and a box containing half of a human kidney.
Oh.
So police believe that the kidney was Catherine Eddowes at the time. However, it was later determined that this was all a prank by a local medical student. Now,
Don't do pranks.
this is the time of the podcast where I say how freaking annoying.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
No.
If
Yeah.
you think that's like a funny...
I did something I've never understood. People are like, oh, there's this murderer going around. Let me, like, play a joke on the police who are trying to catch this murderer. Like,
No, it's so annoying.
how is that funny?
It's not funny. It's stupid. And if you think that's funny, it's not funny. So yeah, it's like imagine being this guy. He's literally just trying to help keep the area safe. He gets a box with a kidney in it. Like, that's traumatizing. And then he's like, oh my gosh, this is the killer. Nope, it was just a local medical student. So, I'm going to hop off my soapbox now. But we are going to go to November 9th, 1888.
We're moving forward.
And I know. And this is when the last victim number 5, her body is found. So this is the last of the canonical 5. And this is Mary Jane Kelly. And she was found at home in her bed by her landlord who was coming to collect rent from her.
Yeesh.
So this killing was by far the most gruesome of all of them. And I'm not going to go into any details because it's not necessary. The landlord who found her said the window was broken in her home and the room was completely covered in blood.
Oof.
And according to the medical examiner, her injuries were so extensive that he suspected it would have taken over 2 hours to inflict all of them.
Oh my gosh.
And that's like serious intensity.
Yeah.
And so much more than compared to the other women.
Wow.
And she was the youngest of all of the victims. And she was unique in that she was the only one not killed on the street. So now that we have discussed the canonical 5, we have to discuss some of the other attacks that people think are the work of Jack the Ripper. So the first 2 took place before official victim number 1, Mary Ann Nichols. And the victims' names are Emma Smith and Martha Tabram. So Emma Smith actually survived her attack long enough to speak to the police. However, she later passed away as a result of her injuries. But she was able to tell the police that she was attacked by a group of 2 to 3 men. And that led people to believe
So
that
it's
she...
probably not Jack.
So it's not Jack. But a lot of people think that she was actually killed by Jack. Tabram, however, did not survive her attack. And she had been stabbed 39 times. And even though the attack was similar in intensity to those of Jack the Ripper, her throat was not cut and she still had all of her insides intact. So the police determined the case to ultimately be unrelated. And there were 4 other murders in the area in that year. And while some believe they were victims of Jack the Ripper, it was concluded that they were the work of another killer. Which, again, was not uncommon in this area.
Right.
So we actually had some eyewitnesses who claimed that they saw, who believed to be Jack the Ripper, and they were able to come up with kind of a physical description of him. So they said he was young, between the ages of 25 to 35. He was anywhere from 5'5" to 5'7". He was fair-skinned. He had a mustache. And a quote from a member of Scotland Yard about his appearance was that he looked perfectly sane, frighteningly normal, and yet capable of extraordinary cruelty. And police also believe that he was single due to the fact that he could go out at all hours of the night and commit these crimes, and his wife wouldn't think it was strange. And that he must have had a job because all of the murders occurred on weekends. So he would have been occupied Monday through Thursday, but Friday through Sunday he could commit crimes. So there were a huge number of suspects in this case.
Well, I feel like anybody was a suspect.
I think at the time there were like 100 suspects, but I think every website that I would look at would have a completely different list of suspects. And I was like, there are so many.
Right, I mean, without any real evidence, how can you narrow it down?
Exactly, yeah. And even though we had a huge number of suspects, there was never any one person that the crimes were pinned on. The head of Scotland Yard had narrowed his suspects down to 3 people, but a lot of people believe that it was none of those 3. So the first 3 are the ones that the head of Scotland Yard suspected. So the first one is a man named Montague Johnson Druitt, and he had family members who were doctors, and apparently he himself had an interest in surgery. And there is some speculation that he might have lived with his cousin who was practicing medicine near the Whitechapel district. And apparently his own family believed that he was insane and that he was maybe the killer.
That's not good.
No. Interestingly enough, he was found dead in the Thames River 4 weeks after the final murder. So that would be the speculation as to why the murder stopped. They're so violent and then all of a sudden they stop. Well, this guy's deceased.
Dead, yeah.
Right.
So is there like a cause of death?
I believe he took his own life. But I saw one website that said it was suspicious, and then I saw one that said he took his own life. So, kind of wasn't able to come up with a definitive answer. The next one is a man named Michael Ostrog, and he was a physician from Russia originally, and he had a pretty extensive criminal history. And apparently he was unable to provide an alibi for where he was during any of the murders. There's not a ton of information on this Michael Ostrog.
So his main thing is that he's a physician
doctor,
and he doesn't have an alibi?
He has a criminal history and he has no alibi.
Well, it could have been him, I guess.
It was him.
I said it could have been.
Could have been. Okay, well, you're right. The next one is Aaron Kosminski. So he was a Jewish and Polish man who lived in the area at the time of the murders. And in 1889, he was actually institutionalized in an insane asylum, and that was shortly after the last murder. And he lived in various asylums for the rest of his life. And apparently he was known to have this hatred towards women, specifically prostitutes. And he matched the physical description of a man in the area the night the double homicide occurred. So recently a book came out that stated he was Jack the Ripper and that there is forensic evidence linking him to the crime.
Oh.
So I saw a ton of articles. Jack the Ripper identity finally revealed. Have we caught Jack the Ripper? Has DNA evidence finally pinned Jack the Ripper? Well, no. So specifically the evidence that was presented was a scarf with blood on it that is believed to be Catherine Eddowes. And they were able to determine this by familial DNA and DNA that is believed to be Jack the Ripper's. So initially they were like, this is him. Aaron Kosminski is 100%, 99% Jack the Ripper.
99%.
Unfortunately, the scientist who came up with this DNA match made a mistake that linked the DNA to a genetic mutation that linked this DNA to 99% of people with European ancestry.
Oh, so no.
So I could probably match this person.
The DNA does
yeah,
not...
it was not.
Okay.
I was like, whoa, we found out who Jack the Ripper was. No.
We found out who Jack the Ripper was, and also he's the father of everyone.
So if you have European ancestry, your DNA might be a match to this. So there goes that bit of forensic evidence.
Yeah.
And the scientist is also kind of sketchy and has refused to speak with anyone about this or answer any questions about the evidence. So there's that. So those are the three that Scotland Yard had. Another theory is Jill the Ripper.
Jill
The Ripper. Not Jack the Ripper, Jill the Ripper.
Jack and Jill went up the hill.
Yeah.
And only one came back.
Okay. So this is the idea that Jack was actually a woman and that the reason she was able to get away with the crimes was that the police were looking for a man.
Kind of smart.
When it was actually a woman.
That would be kind of smart.
And supporters of this theory state that a midwife would actually have had the anatomical knowledge necessary to complete these crimes, and that it wouldn't have been weird for a midwife to be walking around with blood on her at all hours of the day.
Makes sense.
So it would have been easy for her to get away with it. Also, we do need to note that there was this idea that women weren't physically or emotionally capable of committing violent and heinous crimes.
Gotta love it.
And specifically that women weren't capable of being serial killers. And this is a real thing.
Women are killers too, okay?
This is a real thing. Like, in this time, I think it wasn't until like the 1900s that people were like, oh, women can be serial killers too.
I suppose women can murder also.
And I think, and it's still something that like, I think that society has a hard time like seeing.
Right.
Because women are supposed to be soft and nurturing and that kind of thing. And any person can have a lot of evil inside of them.
Yeah, right.
So
that's so
that would have been like totally makes sense. A midwife would have known all about the uterus.
Yeah.
And if she would have walked downtown with her apron covered in blood at 1:30 in the morning, people would have been like, oh, someone must have just had a baby.
Right. It just kind of feels like, though, that if this is true, there's like no way of finding out because just there was no one thinking that it could have been a woman, so we don't know of any like motives or anything.
Yeah.
So it's like if it was a woman, we're never going to know.
Right. Also, there was a physical description.
Right.
And a woman wouldn't have matched the physical description.
Yeah, but if they're not expecting it to be a woman, then
they're probably like, oh, there was this guy. Yeah.
And maybe the person that saw like the assault and was like, oh, I think it's just a husband and a wife. Maybe that is what he saw. And then the woman came and killed her after that.
You never know. This theory is one of my favorites. And that is Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward. So...
That's a lot of names.
He should sound familiar to you because we've actually talked about him.
Is he one of the... Did we talk about him in the royal family conspiracies?
We did. We talked about him in one of our very first episodes.
I don't remember which one he was.
So this was during the time where we talked about the theory that Prince Charles is actually a vampire.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So we are going to call him Al for the sake of simplicity.
Okay.
He is still a royal, even if I don't call him by his full name.
Well, he's got 4 first names. He doesn't need that many.
He's got many first names. Al.
If you consider Prince being a first name, like because
5.
Prince was a person. I mean, that wasn't his
artist
actual
formerly
name.
known as Prince.
But then also actually known as Prince.
Yeah.
He went back to just being known as Prince.
Very confusing.
So Prince is also a first name. So he has 5 first names. He doesn't need that
And nobody
many.
would ever just say like, "Hey Albert," like they'd say Prince Albert.
Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm calling him
That was a better
Al.
British accent.
That was a little bit better. I'll give you that.
It didn't start as a British accent, but it ended as one.
That's all that matters. So Al. So Al was apparently known for, we're going to say, visiting the areas where these crimes were committed.
Wink.
And as a result of these visits, he apparently contracted syphilis, which drove him to insanity. So I am going to let you conclude what I meant by visits.
Well, I
by
think
yourself.
I think we all know. We're adults.
So we are going to talk very briefly about what happens to a person's body as a result of syphilis.
Why?
Because it's important.
Is it?
Yes.
Right.
We are going to call this segment Medicine with Marisa. So syphilis is a disease that is sexually transmitted, in case you didn't know, and it has multiple stages. So the first stage is called the latent stage, and that is where you don't have any symptoms. The first stage, that's the stage 0, I suppose. Primary stage is the first time symptoms will begin to appear. A big one is going to be sores. And these sores will always heal after a few weeks, regardless of if the person receives medical treatment or not. However, if they receive medical treatment, that would be something that would be vital in preventing the disease from spreading to the further stages and causing worsening symptoms. So next we have the secondary stage. Rashes and sores appear all throughout the body, and someone would also have symptoms such as a fever, a headache, hair loss, weight loss, swollen lymph nodes, sore throat, and fatigue. And similar to the primary stage, these symptoms would eventually disappear with or without treatment, but treatment will stop the progression to the tertiary stage. And this is the final and most serious stage of the disease. And this is what happens when a person does not have treatment, and it can be fatal. So this would cause severe organ damage, specifically brain damage, which can have a number of different effects on a person's behavior in life. And historically, end-stage syphilis had led to people seeming to go insane. There was, I think, this kind of, I don't know if myth or saying is the right thing, but people would say end-stage syphilis would cause people to have holes in their brain.
Oh.
And this is why the severe organ damage, specifically severe brain damage. So syphilis is a disease that is very easily treated with antibiotics. Of course, during the 1800s, there were no antibiotics, and there was no treatment or understanding of the disease.
Just missed out, Al.
So if people contracted it, they would end up with these problems that came with the end stages of the disease. And nobody knew how it was transmitted. They didn't know what a sexually transmitted disease was. And so they engaged in high-risk behaviors without knowing that they were high-risk behaviors. And then treated it, didn't know how to treat it, they didn't have a way to treat it, so it would progress to the end stages. So some people, that concludes medicine with Marissa. I hope you learned something.
I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So some people think that after he contracted syphilis, he began killing prostitutes as an act of revenge.
But wouldn't people have noticed him walking around? I mean, he's the prince.
Well, we're going to get into that. Others believe that his frequent visits to the Whitechapel district not only led to him contracting syphilis, but also led to him fathering a child with a woman in the area. So, what do you think the Queen felt when she found out about this, if this is the case?
Not great.
Well, she demanded, apparently, allegedly, that anyone who knew about the child be dealt with. And in his insanity, Al took care of the women himself by killing them due to their knowledge of his child. Other believers in this theory think that it could have been the Queen's personal physician who committed the murders due to the belief that the killer had some basic medical knowledge. And because he was a royal, he was able to get away with the crime, and therefore he was untouchable. And he would kind of take care of anyone who knew anything that could point back to him.
I still feel like people would have seen him.
Yeah.
And that would have been a big thing.
There is no evidence that lends credibility to this theory. I think it's a great story, though.
And he's a vampire, so.
Was he a vampire?
I don't remember. You said something about a vampire.
Charles is for sure a vampire. 100%. I stand by that. I continue to stand by that. So there's no evidence really, but it's an interesting one, for sure.
Sure.
So, and the next subject is Walter Sickert. Now, he was a painter. And this theory was actually proposed by a crime author named Patricia Cornwell. And Ms. Cornwell is very invested in this theory and has devoted millions of dollars and years in looking for evidence to support this theory. And her obsession is so fierce that she has bought his art and torn it up looking for evidence within it.
Jeez.
And she states that he was obsessed with Jack the Ripper and even named a painting after him. This painting was called something like Jack the Ripper's Bedroom and dressed up as him. So first of all, I want to know why she's so obsessed with him.
Yeah, it's weird.
Girl, why? Also, apparently, Walter Sickert was out of the country in France at the time of the murders. But
okay.
Cornwall says he actually was not out of the country, and that drawings show him in London at the time.
Drawings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
The biggest piece of evidence boils down to paper. Apparently, the paper Sickert wrote some of his letters on comes from the same rare type of paper that Jack the Ripper allegedly wrote his letters on.
Nope.
I think the evidence is a little bit
bad.
On the weak side.
I would say the evidence is a little bit not good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. Okay, this one, I'm just going to preface it. I believe this one, I think. So this is Joseph Barnett. So he apparently lived with the fifth victim of the Canonical Five, Mary Kelly. And some people think that he may have actually been in love with her. However, it's reported that he strongly disagreed with her profession as a prostitute. So if he was in love with her, why would he kill the other four women?
Because he wanted to scare her away from being a prostitute.
Right, exactly. He wanted her to be so scared of prostitution that she stopped. And people say that this worked for a while until she eventually got back into it.
Because she needed money.
Because she needed money. And apparently he even offered to support her, but after a period of time, she needed the money. So,
and that's probably why she was murdered in a much more brutal way than any of the others.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
So apparently she gets back into prostitution. He gets mad And the two of them got in one last explosive fight, which led to him moving out and killing her 10 days later while she slept.
I buy it.
Mm-hmm. So, as Ethan said, this could be why her murder was the most gruesome, because it was a personal attack.
Right.
And also him knowing her and living there would have given him access to the other women as well. Because, okay, women know this guy as, this is her roommate.
Right.
She says he's an okay guy, so it's okay if we're with him at night. Like, he has a level of access that he might not have had otherwise. And evidence suggests that she was killed by someone who would have had access to her apartment, such as a former roommate.
Yeah, makes
And
a lot of sense.
Apparently, his nickname was Jack, according to a newspaper around the time, and he matched the physical description. And it also could explain why the murder stopped after her death.
I'm kind of thinking that it's him.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, because here's my thing. Jack the Ripper, he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
He's killed 5 women. In a very short period of time, he's taunting the police.
Right, and then he just stops.
About how he still has got whores to kill.
Right.
He's not going to stop, and they're going to have to catch him if he's going to stop. And then he gets to 5 and he stops. Like,
right.
What?
Right, why would he stop?
Why would he stop?
Yeah,
Something would have had to happen.
I was honestly thinking before you listed any of the suspects, I was thinking, my thought was it was a guy that was scorned and was getting his revenge. And then the final woman was a woman that he knew, or the woman that scorned him, and that's why the murder was so brutal. And this makes complete sense. That was what I was thinking before you even mentioned any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm yeah, I feel like it has to be him.
Yeah. He was not in a lot of the videos I watched. What? And then I watched one of them and they mentioned him. I was like,
it makes so much sense. The motive is absolutely there.
Yeah. I was listening to a Dateline podcast this morning on the way to work, and the guy who was, or the reporter who was doing the podcast was saying that he had talked to a friend of his in the Houston Police Department who said that murders almost always happen for one of 3 reasons: love, money, or pride.
Right. It makes so much sense. It almost makes too much sense.
Yeah. So, another theory, there were 2...
I don't care. We already figured it out.
I'm going to keep talking.
All right.
So, there were 2 convicted serial killers that were believed to be responsible as well, but they were dismissed due to the fact that they killed their victims by use of poison, and experts believe it is highly unlikely that a serial killer would change their method of kill that drastically.
Right, especially because Jack, did it the same way multiple times.
Right. And one of the serial killer suspects reportedly stated, "I am Jack," before being hanged for his crimes.
Yeah, he just wanted
However,
attention.
This man was actually in prison in America during the time the murders occurred.
Well, okay, then you can't have been Jack.
And the stories of his confession didn't come out till after he died. And people who were at the hanging, because they used to be a public event,
right,
didn't hear him say anything.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
Yeah. Another one is a man named James Maybrick, and he actually died 1 year after the murders occurred. So he was a wealthy man who didn't live in the area. However, since the murders all happened on the weekends, he would have been able to travel in by train for the murders. So
it's
the
a
biggest...
lot of effort just to kill people.
Yeah. The biggest piece of evidence pointing to him, a diary, apparently found in his house, where he named himself Jack the Ripper. The problem here is the man who discovered the diary stated at one point that he made it all up, and then later said he didn't make it up.
So he's not a reliable source.
Right. And also the diary never says it belongs to him. Some people, I don't know if you had a diary, but I had a diary. And on the inside of that diary, I wrote my name. This is not so.
Yeah.
It's just based on this guy's word that it was his.
Feels kind of not good evidence.
So the last suspect I'm going to name is Lewis Carroll. Name sounds familiar, huh?
It does.
He was the author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Why is he... What?
Okay.
How? Okay.
So believers in this theory think that the author harbored a very dark side of himself, kind of like another identity, and that he went on to kill as a result of supposed abuse he suffered as a child. And they also believe he put clues as to his secret identity in his books using anagrams. And there was a book written about this theory called Jack the Ripper, Lighthearted Friend by a man named Richard Wallace. Besides this, there is no evidence pointing to Carroll, and he was actually out of the area during every single one of the killings. Of course, he could have taken the train.
Okay, but...
I just had to put him in because I was like, he's famous. I have to put him in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But, yeah, I was reading, like, you can read the anagrams, and I was like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. I've never...
Maybe I'm
just
dumb.
So confusing. I don't know. No, I don't think
But I was like, I don't really know about that
I
one.
don't think it was Lewis Carroll. I also feel like if Lewis Carroll had a darker side, it would have been revealed.
Maybe.
Especially if it was like that dark.
Right, if it's that dark. So even though the murders occurred over 100 years ago, people are still obsessed with finding out who the killer is.
Well, they're dumb because we already figured it out.
Okay, well, and there are a ton of websites dedicated to this. People who are into this call themselves ripperologists.
Okay. It's a dumb name.
And you can even go on a Jack the Ripper tour around the Whitechapel district in London and see all the spots where all of this happened.
I do not want to do that. That's creepy.
I don't get that. Like, I don't get the serial killer tours.
It's creepy.
It's just like...
It kind of takes away the fact that the victims were people.
I feel like it's almost... Yeah, it's disrespectful. Like, I think there's something different between, like, historical monuments, like the Holocaust Museum.
Right.
Like, this is something that happened. We need to learn about it.
But those things are also in honor of the victims.
So it never happens again.
This is in honor of Jack the Ripper.
It's like, here's the spot where victim number five's body was found. It's like...
These people are more obsessed with Jack the Ripper than they are with the victims. That's not...
That is something
cool.
that I read in a lot of the articles was like, Jack the Ripper is famous. Oop, knocked over the microphone. Jack the Ripper is famous. Jack the Ripper has become notarized. He's become a celebrity. He's become someone that people are obsessed with. And nobody could probably name one name of the victim. Like, to me, it's just like, why would I want to go somewhere to see where a man brutally killed people?
Or a woman.
Or a woman.
But we know who it was.
The problem is, this case is never going to be solved.
Oh, absolutely not. There's no way. But we solved it.
But
we solved it.
Okay, yeah. Not only have a lot of years passed, all of the evidence that they had was destroyed during World War II in a bombing in England.
Convenient. No. Not convenient.
So, as you know, Ethan and I actually solved the case. So, Scotland Yard, you can actually reopen it.
Well, we can be honorary detectives. You have detectives there, right?
Fly us out to the UK. And
what do you call them? Bobbies? Don't they call them bobbies?
I think that's in Canada.
No, those are Mounties.
No, yeah, you're right.
I think they call them bobbies.
Yeah, you're probably right.
We'll be bobbies.
So Ethan and I solved the case.
Just call us honorary bobbies.
All these ripperologists, and Ethan and I did it in 1 hour.
I haven't heard of any of it before this, so...
Yeah.
Suck on that.
This is usually where I say, who do you think Jack the Ripper is?
I honestly forgot the guy's name.
Let's go back and find it.
I forgot what his name was.
Joseph Barnett.
Joseph Barnett. That's who the killer is.
No, 100%.
No doubt in my mind.
Because here's the thing.
It
makes sense. It makes sense.
Motive is everything.
Why?
Means, motive, opportunity. He had them all.
You just sounded like a true crime person.
Because I know things.
Okay, it answers all the questions. Why was number 5 so much more violent than everyone else?
And why
was she killed in her house? Why did he stop after that?
The only thing that would have made it more obvious is if he committed suicide afterwards out of, like, guilt.
Right.
Which was immediately, my first thought was the one guy who said committed suicide. I thought it might have been him. But then you point this guy and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's him. Mm-hmm. It's Joseph Barnett. Mm-hmm. Like, the only way it would have been more obvious is if he, like, wrote a confession and, like, killed himself because he was so guilty for what he'd done because he killed the woman he loved. But, like...
And 4 other women.
Well, yes, that too. But he probably didn't feel as guilty about that. Because he was like, "Oh,
I'm doing it for a
I
noble
want my
reason.
love to stop being a prostitute.
I'm doing it for
going
a
to
noble
scare
reason."
her out of doing it." Like, that's not an unheard of reason to commit a crime. People have done that before.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is Joseph Barnett, and I will take my Bobby cap.
Okay, well, if you guys agree with us, let us know. The comments are a great place to respectfully leave your opinions on who you think may have did it, why you think it was Joseph Barnett.
Yeah, and if you don't think it's Joseph Barnett, feel free to tell us why you're wrong.
Ethan, if you
I am 100% convinced.
there are a lot of people who have a lot of theories about this, so I'm open to hear any of them. I did get a lot of information from some really great YouTube videos, some really great articles, and of course, those will all be linked in the show notes.
In the description of the video you're watching right now.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Happy Valentine's Day.
The real fun topic for Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Sorry.
Kiss someone you love, or hug them if that's more your style.
Sorry.
Shake hands with somebody you love.
Give them a nice
firm handshake.
A firm handshake. Anyways,
Nothing shows your love like a nice firm handshake.
Please let go of my hand. Thank you. Just a little too firm. That was a little too... anyways, thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.